You formed me in my inmost being. You knit me in my mother's womb. I praise you. So wonderfully you made me. Wonderful are your works. My very self you knew. My bones were not hidden from you. When I was being made in secret, fashioned as in the depths of the earth, your eyes foresaw my actions. In your book, all are written down. My days were shaped before you came to be. Hello and welcome to Closer Walk Catholic Communications. I'm Father Bayer, your host, and we're glad that you can join us today. This is Psalm 139, and I chose it very specifically for today. As you will see, I'm not following the liturgical calendar, and it's a passage that I think we need to hear. You formed me in my inmost being. You knit me in my mother's womb. My bones were not hidden from you. When I was being fashioned in secret, your eyes foresaw my actions. We need to listen to this. It's no secret that the world in which we live is very, very divided and very, very hostile to people who are different. We live with a woke culture. And what's interesting is the woke culture continues to preach tolerance. And the tolerance is only for people who agree with their thoughts. We've seen on college campuses people who were not woke, but perhaps more conservative, being shouted down and not allowed to speak. Some of them even being subject to violence because of their perspectives. We saw a pro-life speaker at a med school white coat ceremony in Michigan where all the graduates, or a large part of them, got up and left the building because that person didn't have their attitude. I'm just thinking, do I want to go to a doctor that thinks only to treat me if I agree with you and treat me if our thoughts and our ideas are the same? The other day I was in the Atlanta airport and I saw a whole bunch of people walking down the, not runway, but and down the hall, and they all had BLM t-shirts on. I wish it meant belt loops matters, but it doesn't. It means Black Lives Matters. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with their definition of what Black Lives Matters means. I think the young children who are being killed in our city streets, their lives matter. They're victims of violence. I don't care if they're black, white, yellow, brown. I don't care. Those lives matter. It bothers me when I see the only lives that matters are lives where the child who is black is killed by a white police officer. That life matters. But so do all of the other kids who are killed by God knows who, oftentimes people of their same race and their same group, and we don't go out for them. So I disagree with that mentality. Now that we've had corporate America jump on the bandwagon and contribute millions and millions of dollars, and to see that those dollars did not go to upgrade the underserved community, but those dollars went to enrich some people who founded that organization, that bothers me. It bothers me tremendously. But you know what? I didn't go attack those people. I didn't go confront them. I didn't go yell at them and ask, what about the children who are being killed in our streets every day? Why don't they? I didn't go do that. But had I been walking down that concourse and had a T-shirt that said, Dobbs finally got it right, I guarantee you, I would have been in for the fight of my life in the airport for my T-shirt. And so it raises some questions about the way we have allowed society and the media to bully people whose thoughts are not our own. When I read this from Psalm 139, I realize that God had a plan for my life when I was inside my mother's womb, that I was a person inside my mother's womb. And what's very, very interesting is I saw bumper stickers saying, Dobbs is the new female slavery, saying that this decision, returning to the states the decision to make up their own laws in regards to abortion, the termination of the unborn, they are now calling that the new slavery. Well, I wish people understood real history and not just very selective history. One of the great things that we've seen in the past, and people have compared this decision to the Dred Scott decision. If you're not familiar, the Dred Scott decision was a Supreme Court decision in the United States that dealt with the question whether or not black people should have the rights of others. Can we consider former slaves and children as former slaves as human? Now, as offensive as that sounds, the question of whether or not we can consider black people as human, that was the basis of the Dred Scott decision. They very incorrectly decided that black people could not be considered human, therefore we could enforce all of the horrible things that went along with the persecution of black people due to the Dred Scott decision. If you go and you examine Roe v. Wade, the very same question for Dred Scott decision was applied to Roe v. Wade. Can you consider this unborn child a human? Roe v. Wade said, it's a fetal blob. It's not a human. For those of us who were around in the early days, we realized that the big issue about abortion was viability, that you could kill them up to the point where they were viable. Therefore, if at that a point in a pregnancy you remove the child, is it formed enough to live on its own? You know what? No child is able to live on its own without extreme assistance. And then we got where we had the former governor of Virginia who was a neonatologist and worked on children inside the womb, actually make the statement that once a child was born, you could take the child, make it comfortable on a table or something, and then decide whether or not that child should live. That's no longer viability. And in moral theology, we talk about the wedge argument. And the wedge argument is very simply, if you get your foot in the door, they can't close the door altogether. And the longer your foot stays there, the more you're going to be able to open the door. Eventually, you'll be able to sling that door wide open. And so when I hear people talking about Dobbs and that remanding of the abortion decision back to the states, and that's what it was, and then people comparing that to slavery, they don't understand. They don't understand their history. And the history is that the slavery laws, known as the Dred Scott laws, were the ones who said you cannot consider black people and descendants of slaves and slaves as human. And because of all the injustices that created, very rightly so, the Dred Scott decision was overturned and outlawed. But now, when we look at Roe v. Wade being not overturned completely, but being put back in the hands of the state, they're comparing that to slavery. They really don't know what they're talking about. And now, for some reason, they have said that the right for a mother to abort her child is a constitutionally protected right. It never was a constitutionally protected right. Like Dred Scott, because we got it wrong and not considering black people as human, it had to be overturned, and rightly so. And now we look at the same reality and say, for some reason, this is a constitutionally protected right, and it was only codified in 1973. And so when we start to look at these issues, nobody wants to hear this. If I sit down with a young person who's pro-choice and say, can I talk to you about this decision? They don't want to hear it because now I am anti-feminist, or I am a misogynistic, or I hate all women, or, whatever. And so when we deal with things like this, we need to understand that at this point in time, the laws have been changed, but the hearts have not been changed. And it's incumbent upon all of us who believe in the sanctity and dignity of every human life. It's important for us to now start to create what a pro-life culture is like. And that's a lot more than being anti-abortion. We need to understand what real pro-life is. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Stay with us. Hi, I'm Father Jeff Bae from Closer Walk Catholic Communications. Thank you for being here today, and a special thanks for the support that you give us. First of all, your prayerful support we so desperately need, and also your financial support. We are donor-driven, and that is what keeps us on the air today. As you well know, the truth is in great demand and in very short supply, and mainstream media is not going to bring you the truth of the Gospels of our Lord Jesus Christ because that's not socially acceptable and it's not politically correct. Certainly we all realize that when this life journey's over, we don't stand before the Supreme Court, we stand before the throne of God. Therefore, with great clarity and great charity, to pronounce the truth of the gospel is important. Your prayers, your financial support enables us to do that. So we thank you, and may God bring you closer in your walk with the Lord each day.
God bless you.
My very self you knew. My bones were not hidden from you. When I was being made in secret, fashioned as in the depths of the earth, your eyes foresaw my actions, and in your book all were written down. My days were shaped before one came to be. Hello and welcome back to Closer Walk Catholic Communications. I'm Father Bayer, your host, and we're glad that you came back to join us. I'm speaking about a very, very difficult topic today. And some people may turn off the television and say that priest is crazy. Others may say, thank God, someone's finally explaining it and giving us the ability to discuss it, whatever your case may be. I don't know how many people understand the origins of birth control and abortion. You know, when years ago, when they were forming families and they had 5, they had 8, they had 10, whatever children, that was a normal way of life, depending on where you lived and what you did. There came a time in this immigrant country of ours, the turn of the 20th century, when immigrants were landing by the droves in Ellis Island and in different ports throughout the country. People started to get very, very worried. Now understand, my grandfather came over here in 1911 at the age of 13 from Lebanon. And, it was part of populating this country. That's why we've always been called a melting pot. That's why we've always, understood that we're a country of immigrants. The only Native Americans is associated with the American Indian group. And unfortunately, that group oftentimes was relegated to reservations, and an immigrant population took over this country. And I'm not going to discuss, the aspects of that. It's where we are. It's how we live. And in the midst of this huge immigration, Irish, Italian, Polish, Germans, everyone seeking a better way of life, it got to be a great concern to a lady by the name of Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger was white, she was Anglo-Saxon, and she was Protestant. And she got very concerned about the immigration of this country. And so she had a meeting with the Nazi doctor, head of experimentation, Joseph Mengele. If you've ever seen any of the stuff about Nazi Germany, Joseph Mengele was the one who did all the experimentation on the deformed, on twins, all these different things. And he was really a doctor of horrors. And if you ever get a chance to watch the movie The Boys in Brazil, and you'll have to go way back in the archives to find that one, but it tells you a lot about the life of Joseph Mengele. But anyway, her concern was, at the turn of the century, we have too many blacks, we have too many Jews, we have too many Catholics, and we have too many Slavic people being born in this country. And if we don't do something, and do something now, what's going to happen is you will end up with more of that group than of the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant mentality, and they'll take over our country. Thus, Margaret Sanger became known as the mother of birth control. Now, what a lot of people have come to see is very responsible family planning. It's not what she intended. She intended for the undesirables not to be born. And when, at the turn of the century, the Catholic Church, who by all accounts were probably, more, had larger families than anyone else, when the Catholic Church didn't embrace this artificial contraception, then we had to do something and terminate them. That's when they started talking about these back alley abortions with coat hangers. But that's why they wanted to make it legal. They wanted to make it legal because obviously that back alley is a very dangerous procedure. But it wasn't for the well-being of family planning. It was intended to get rid of and make sure we don't have too many blacks, Jews, Catholics, and Slavs being born in this country. And of course, that gave rise to a safer and legal desire for abortion. It had nothing to do with saving the planet. It had to do with saving their place in society. And unfortunately, when you look at the statistics, a larger group of African Americans have fallen prey to the abortion gimmick. And so, to deal with this whole question, we need to understand where we come from. We need to understand where we come from. And the tragic part is that we have allowed our education system to become so ingrained with these progressive, one world order, depending on the government for everything. We've become so ingrained with that we have a generation of young people who's lost perspective. That to try to sit down and say, okay, well, let's talk about transgenderism. And they go, how dare you? How dare you not let someone decide what they want to do and what they want to be? And we need to start children at ages 4 and 5. Kids at 4 and 5 TT. Kids at 4 and 5 don't know the difference. They play with someone, they don't care what color you are, but you're about the same height. And you're a little kid, and you're just as clumsy as they are. That's what kids see. I'm old enough, and so are many of my viewers, to remember being educated in the Baltimore Catechism. And I'm going to take the first two questions that I'm sure everyone at home can answer. The first question of the Baltimore Catechism is, who made me? Sure, God made me. And why did God make me? To know him, to love him, and serve him in this life, and be happy with him in the next. Take those two questions, just those two questions, and let's say we could get society to agree that those two questions are correct. They were made by God. Know him, love him, and serve him, and be happy with him in the next. We're made by God. We're made for God, and we're made to be with God. If you take that simple equation and now start to apply it to all the things that have become part of this agenda, and I hate to use the term woke because it is broke. It ain't woke, it's broke. But to start to take children at a preschool age and tell children that, it's your choice to decide if you want to be male or female. Leave them alone. Let the kids grow. Let them figure it out. I'm in an area where we're, for the first time, second in the state in our educational system, been first for many years. We have seventh grade kids coming out of the closet. When I was in seventh grade, I was too embarrassed to ask a little girl to dance with me, a slow dance at a party, on a parent's back patio. And at age, 12, 13, you know enough about sex to decide if you're gay or straight. And then for the ones who say, I'm non-binary. For those of you who don't know, that means I may be 15, I may be 20. I haven't made my decision yet to live as a male or a female. All right, let's just say that I would accept that, although I think it's really unbalanced. Let's say I would accept it. If I don't accept it and I don't pretend the way you pretend, and if I use an incorrect pronoun in referring to you, we're having tenured college professors lose their tenure for using incorrect pronouns. Really? Really? And if we're going to live in a world like this, and if we can't discuss it, and if we become so ingrained that the government provides for us, not God, we have a long way to come back. Many of you are probably sitting down saying, well, I need to have this conversation with my grandson or my granddaughter, my son or my daughter. I need to let him see this program. We really need to do more than that. First of all, we need to understand that we can talk about being pro-life, but there's so many living people who need a pro-life culture, who need care, who need concern. Lord, when do we see you hungry, naked? We need to answer that. And when we create that pro-life culture, like St. Francis, we're called to preach the gospel continuously, and if necessary, use words. Thanks for being with us. God bless you.